Welcome everybody to this webinar, How to Improve the User Experience with Personalized Online Portals. My name is Chad Campbell. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at SilverTech. SilverTech is a digital marketing and technology firm based in Manchester, New Hampshire. We are also the Progress Sitefinity Partner of the Year. Today we're going to be talking with Doug Beebe, the Director of Information Technology from Actors Equity, who we built a portal for using Sitefinity last year, as well as Christina Baker, who is our digital strategy team lead and did the strategy along with her team, working with our design team as well to create the new portal. So welcome, Christina and Doug. Doug, I like your background. It's very actors.
Thank you.
He's on a stage right now.
I prepared a quick 12 bars for you and a quick monologue I can provide.
All right, so we're going to go through. We have a few slides here. We're basically going to walk through, what this project entailed, the value that we were able to add to the Actors Equity membership and to the organization as a whole. We'll look at project challenges, pain points, how we came to our solutions at a high level, implementing Sitefinity. Talk a little bit about some lessons learned and member feedback as well. So basically how this project started is, and I guess Doug and the Actors team put out a request for a proposal. I guess, Doug, what was the main purpose for that RFP at the time? What was driving the decision to have a new portal?
Well, I think there were a couple of key factors. One was just, a need to sort of catch ourselves up with the technology that we were using. Our previous website platform was an outdated platform that was just not serving us, no longer supported. So we had kind of gone past this point of being able to stay on that platform. And we also knew that it was also time to sort of reinvest in that outward-facing resource, right? As a labor union, that, like many companies, our websites and presence out in the digital world have become increasingly important. So we wanted to give our members a new experience as well.
Yeah. The old platform, was that part of your association management system, or
It was a platform called ADX Studio
Mhm.
that was folded into our Dynamics 365 system, and had sort of a weird life cycle that it started within the Microsoft ecosystem, and then they broke off into their own company, and then Microsoft consumed them again, and so that in and of itself made it sort of challenging. And then for us, it also, from a technical standpoint, that platform was really a content management system that was baked into CRM, and so was fully dependent on the performance functionality of that CRM system, which is not what we have in our new wonderful solution that we partnered with you to develop. So that was a key factor as well. It became increasingly difficult to maintain a level of performance and stability because of the sort of overhead that was being created by all of the content being pulled directly from CRM instead of just important member content that we wanted to take advantage of.
Right, which was a big part of this project. But
yes.
I think it's an important point because a lot of associations, ones that we work with, they're really dependent on that AMS that they have, and a lot of times they're outdated, and making that change is painful and a big investment in a lot of cases.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we received the RFP and responded to it, and I think there's a couple reasons why I think Actors Equity chose SilverTech and why we were so excited about the project. I think from a cultural perspective, we seem to align really well. I think from a technology perspective, we were very much aligned. Doug and his team were, into Sitefinity and playing with it a little bit. .NET shop through and through, really. SilverTech is as well. We use the same, DevOps from a development and pipeline perspective. We have Microsoft Azure that Doug and Equity was really interested in using, and we host a lot of websites and have a lot of experience in Microsoft Azure. So it was just really a good fit. I think that, along with our process and willingness to do co-development with Doug and his team, really just kind of positioned us to have a mutually beneficial relationship together. That's actually partnered into a new public-facing website that should be launching soon, and hopefully some other projects as time goes on.
I would just
Yeah.
quickly add
Yep.
that the other key factor was your development process, and that's a
Mhm.
credit to Christina and her team, that this idea of sort of breaking the project into some pieces that said, let's not just dive into making a website, and let's not just look at what you have and port it over to make the customer happy. We stopped and built a first phase that really delved into what we were looking for, what our members were looking for, getting the professional advice from your team on how to make this site better. And that, I think, aligned us and focused us
Mhm.
and gave us the vision that we really needed, because we came in knowing some of the technical things that we wanted to do, and we knew the platform that we wanted. But that first phase was a key selling factor, and I think the key to our success. So that's a credit to Christina and her team.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely.
Doug. Yeah, I think that's such a great point, and that's something where I feel like, when you have a partner, a digital partner, it can really help you because, all of us, we're so sort of in our lane, and we know what we need and we know what we want. We think we understand our user base as much as we possibly can, and then to have someone from the outside with sort of have fresh eyes and be able to apply some of that. Sometimes you can uncover some really great opportunities that you didn't realize that can really drive home the value of membership.
Absolutely. I still refer back to a lot of that, some of those original group studies and ideas, because you can't necessarily achieve everything,
Mhm.
at that first iteration. And so, as you know, the site is ongoing and always changing. So it's a becomes a good reference guide to make sure we're still on track.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we did there as part of this webinar, but basically how SilverTech breaks it up is we really look at understanding the membership, potential membership, those users, and Christina will talk a little bit about developing personas and user journeys and user journey mapping and things like that. In addition, we also have the creative as part of that phase. That strategy informs the creative, and then in conjunction with that, we really lay out what that technology piece is going to be, what that co-development is going to look like. But to your point, Doug and Christina, definitely looking at the membership first, usability, understanding the audience, then overlaying the technology, really kind of sets us up in that first phase to be on an implementation path where expectations are aligned. We know what we're building. We know what challenges and risks there might be going into the implementation phase of the project. Dan, I was hoping you could give kind of, not everybody knows Actors Equity. I was hoping you got to give a little bit of a background on who Actors is, your membership. Obviously, based on this picture, you guys have been around for a little while.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, actually, Actors Equity is we are a labor union that represents actors and stage managers performing in the live theater. We were the first theatrical labor union to be established in 1913, at the sort of core of the labor movement at the early 20th century. And we, like a plumbers union or a carpenters union, represent actors and their well-being, the wages that they earn, the benefits that they earn, the safety in the workplace, which in the live theater can be, an important factor. So we negotiate, terms and conditions for their employment. We provide health and pension benefits through a separate fund. And we provide a variety of other resources, so in and around the theatrical community. We have about 51,000 members across the United States, and they work in all kinds of theater, from professional theater on Broadway to a dinner theater in Indianapolis, Indiana, and New Hampshire as well.
Yeah, we do have membership in New Hampshire. Sure. Great. And move. There we go. All right, you mentioned some of the things, Doug, that when we first started, what brought this project on. I think maybe this is an opportunity to really kind of talk a little bit about some of the main pain points you and your team were facing, as well as your membership when it came to some of the functionality of the site. And I know we're specifically going to talk about casting call, but maybe just a quick overview of how that is used by your membership and kind of how important it is and some of the pain points that were happening around that.
Sure. So Casting Call is our own custom job search engine, and we actually developed it in 1998 in the first iteration of our website using, I think, an Access database and some early ASP pages, and it has been really the mainstay of our sort of digital presence since then, because it's sort of one of the first steps of our members working, right? The way that a member gets a job is to audition for producers. And certainly in 1998, there was no online opportunity for someone to do that. They had to go into an office and look at a bulletin board, like we used to sort of do in the old days for all kinds of things. So this database has been a critical benefit of membership, to be able to go and search for various types of auditions across the country, and try to attend those auditions to get a job. And so that feature has been an ever-changing, growing. Obviously, it's no longer part of an Access database, so it has evolved into a much more complex system. In 2017, we added a sign-up feature that actually allows members in auditions taking place in our key office cities of New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles to actually sign up online to get a slot for auditions. And so as that platform, that piece of the platform has developed, the complexities have also increased, and there are, needless to say, the Casting Call from a sign-up perspective quickly grew into a supply and demand challenge, because there are way more members seeking to get a slot than there are slots on a given day. And so that results in increased traffic to our site, and competing members trying to get into those slots. And so we were really feeling one of the main pain points was getting that sign-up system to be stable. The system was designed to have signups go live at a single time during a couple times throughout the day, and so that meant a rush of traffic. We had some complex integrations with a queuing platform to help alleviate that traffic. So there were just a lot of challenges to make that platform stable, to continue to make the content consumable in a modern way. And I would just quickly add that this was all customized code, right? This, even on the ADX platform, there was no audition module that we could turn on and tweak, right? We had to build all of this from scratch. And so when you sort of paired those challenges with the sort of aging ADX platform, which made it increasingly more difficult for us to develop against, we were stuck between a rock and a hard place. So that was one of the important parts of this project, was to again bring us to a more modern platform where we could apply some more modern, take a more modern approach to not only the technology but to the usability of that feature as well.
I got my first email in 1998, by the way, when you built that first Casting Call.
One of my early anecdotes that I tell about coming to Equity in 1998, because I also came at that time, we've been there for 26 years, was when I arrived, there was a memorandum that was sent out, sort of noting my coming on board. And I went to the top of the organization in my new role and was trying to explain to him that this memo, which would have been typed up, photocopied, passed out to everybody's individual inbox, a copy was mailed to the other offices where it would have been photocopied and put in everyone's inbox, that I was compelling them that now that we had this new email system, that we could send this kind of information out as an email to everyone. And the response I got was, "Doug, email is not for important things." Somehow I've lasted 26 years, but that kind of told me the road I had ahead of me in terms of convincing at that time 70-some-year-old bureaucracy that change will happen and it'll be okay, and someday email will be an afterthought. But
this email thing is just a fad. It's not going to stick. Christina, anything you want to add about some of the pain points you might have seen, like, from the onset regarding like usability, the strategic standpoint of mobile maybe was an issue, I think.
Yeah, I know we talked a lot about mobile, a large percentage of our user base is doing primarily mobile. And really working off their phones, especially when you think about the lifestyle of our membership, it's somewhat of a nomadic lifestyle. We're
Absolutely.
traveling a lot. Something also kind of interesting that we don't typically see was the higher percentage use of Macs. It's a creative industry. We saw more than half were coming from browsers that were on Apple products, which doesn't necessarily affect, when it comes to strategy, but it's good information to know, so that when we're looking at, technical implications or page speed, things like that, it is good information to have to make sure that we're optimizing. Typically when we see, for SilverTech, we see a lot of clients who are coming from desktop, and it may be smaller screen sizes. When we're in a creative industry, we're going to see much larger screen sizes, so these are the types of things that you really have to think through, to Doug's point earlier, when it comes from a strategic perspective, because it can affect things like design and how we lay pages out to make sure that we're making the most of our real estate. And then the search functionality was a big one. I know that was a really big one as far as pain points were concerned, and that really came to help us understand how we can give us a better idea of content strategy, tagging, what types of information do people want to know? Do they want to know if something's a form or a PDF, video, whatever it might be? How do they like to search? And that was something that we learned a lot about in our discovery process.
Great. So we talked a lot about casting call, which, of course, it's a big piece of the portal. But casting call was not originally part of the scope of this project. We were going to leave casting call as kind of its own separate, customized piece of technology kind of over there while we were redoing the rest of the site. And I think at some point, Doug, you all decided, hey, it was before we even started the project, you had reached out to me and said, hey, I'm not feeling good about skipping casting call. I can't imagine we build this beautiful new portal, and then the main piece, it's not the only piece of, functionality we provide in the portal, but it's the biggest piece, and I think it's going to be too jarring. Let's figure this out. I don't know what kind of budget I have for this, but what if we split it up? What if you all did kind of the framework of it, and your engineer Kurt could be doing a lot of the custom development around it and modernizing it. So I guess if you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what that decision-making process was like, and kind of how you got buy-in and stuff like that to redo.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, if I recall, a lot of it was, this fear of sort of biting off more than you can chew, right? Like there's a lot, like we knew this was going to be a big endeavor. And so I think the original thought was that it made sense to say, well, let's get this over to a new platform and do all the heavy lifting and the work that needs to be done to sort of reimagine this portal. And then we'll circle back and tackle casting calls. So it had sort of a pragmatic root in it, but it was flawed as I think as time passed and I kept looking at the challenges that we were facing. Remember, one of the reasons we were doing this was to get off of this old platform. And at one point, I remember saying to you, like, I feel like we're moving everything over to this brand new shiny cruise liner, and we're just going to leave casting call, this most important asset, sort of floating and bobbing in the old rowboat back here. And that as we got closer and closer to this project, that seemed like the wrong direction to go, and that we should make the investment while we had this resource. And I think especially an RFP process is a very sort of tedious and arduous task.
Tell me about it.
Right, you on both sides of the equation, right? And you're dealing with so many what ifs, and you don't know who your partner is, right? And so I think that also informed it. Like once we had this idea of like, oh, this is going to be great. This is, personally speaking, many of these challenges that we're talking about um, from the old site were also born out of the fact that it was kind of me and Kurt, the other engineer that you mentioned, sort of doing all this work ourselves. So I think the reality that we all of a sudden found a partner who was going to be able to, help us achieve these goals, all of a sudden kind of shine a light on that to say, oh, well, then why would we not take advantage of that? Let's find the resources, find the money to make that investment, which involved um, also, taking casting call off of old web forms and moving it over to MVC and using an API. There were just some things that we already had on our short list that we knew needed to happen. But I think you all were able to sort of step up to that and say, yeah, we can absolutely do that. This is the time. So it was a really prudent thing because there's also if we put this in the context of time, right, we were in a COVID world, or sort of the end of COVID. And so from our perspective, auditions had really come to a complete halt, right? Our industry went into a coma like so many other industries. And so the importance of casting call all of a sudden became less, but we knew, well, at least optimistically speaking, that this was going to come back, and it has. And I can speak firsthand now in hindsight that the ability to now to have casting call be robust and fast and strong and resilient, as a result of that investment that we made, has paid off. Now that people are back, we'll have 900 people in one morning attempting to get slots, and the site is performing well. The members don't always get the slots and they're not happy, but that's not a result of the technology impeding, which was sort of what happened in the past.
So I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, and I'll kind of hand it over to Christina, but her and her team have a process that they follow. And I think in this case, Christina, it really started with, I think we did a big survey, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, to find out some information.
Yep.
I guess, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you found and kind of how you looked at the strategy?
Yeah, so this one, I think we we approach strategy a little bit differently for this one. So typically in our strategic process, we'll do a number of focus groups, discovery sessions with some key audience types. But we really wanted to make sure that everyone had a voice. It was very important to us that we felt, collectively, between equity and SilverTech, it was very important to us that we felt like everyone had a chance to contribute. Being a membership organization, this is what your dues are for. And so we want to make sure that everyone had a chance to sort of have their say. And clearly we cannot have focus groups with 50,000 members. So what we sort of came up with was identifying some key groups to have that actual sort of live conversation with. And then we created a survey that we sent out to the general populace that anyone could reply to and give their thoughts on the experience. And this served a couple really great purposes. One was, for us, really being able to embed with the user groups, stage actors, stage or actors, stage managers. And then we looked at it from an approach of those that are sort of veteran members, who've been members for a long time, and those that are newer members. And it was important delineation, not just for the sort of obvious demographics of it. How do we really provide an experience for an older member that's maybe a little bit less digital savvy versus a younger member who's extremely digitally savvy. But it's also a very different, a very different sort of need base and pain point. Our veteran members are perhaps coming up on retirement, are more interested in health insurance, are more interested in things like that the association is providing for them. Whereas some of our younger members are more interested in just like, I need all the work I can get. Maybe I'm a little bit more interested in some of the affinity groups, starting to build my network, just different priorities. And it's very important to keep that in mind. And what we saw was really how each group had very specific pain points and also very specific needs when they come to the portal. They're really looking at specific areas. Some were very much looking into forms. A lot of our stage managers need a lot of those forms and they want to be able to access them quickly. These forms sometimes get updated, they're different per show, so they need to be able to find them very quickly. And then obviously the needs of the casting call for some of our actors is very important as well. And that's what we really started to tease out when we had these conversations and when looking at the survey data. Something that's also really interesting is that a lot of times we start to see a lot of overlap and repetitive complaints, which is kind of nice because it means that if we can hit some really key things, we can make the experience accelerate in a big way just by doing some really key optimizations.
Right, I think, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the work you did there, but I just want to touch real quickly. While you're doing these surveys and doing your personas and user journeys, which we're going to skip to next, our technical owner, who's our associate director of engineering, Ian Chenard, was on this project along with some other developers on our side, worked really closely with Doug and his developer, Kurt. To develop we knew what pieces of technology we had to work with, right? We knew we had Sitefinity, we have Microsoft Dynamics as our CRM, we have Casting Call, and we also have something called the Portal Connector, which I'm sure some of you are Sitefinity clients may be familiar with, but it is a middleware basically between Dynamics and Sitefinity. And it helps with performance. But some of our big, and Microsoft Azure, obviously. So some of our big concerns were really around performance, right, Doug? Like that was kind of how do we handle authentication? How are we going to handle performance when X amount of people are hitting casting call all at once? You know, what are all the calls that are going back and forth between the portal connector and Sitefinity? All those types of things are really what we were trying to work through at that point. Is there anything specific you would want to add to that as somebody that was kind of in the weeds through that technical planning perspective?
Yeah, I think you touched on some of those key areas. We knew that the authentication piece, it's a portal, so you have to, there has to be certain prerequisites in order to access the site and be an active member. And so that authentication piece was going to be key. We ended up going with Microsoft Azure B2C. It's supported by Sitefinity, and we knew that a third-party authentication provider would give us, sort of a lot of flexibility in the future. So, we were already in an Azure space in terms of hosting our other site, but we were not using the sort of most cost-efficient resources. We're still using traditional VMs and a VMSS staging appliance, a very expensive gateway. So, we knew that we could do better in terms of putting this onto an Azure web app. The ability to scale those instances has also been something that in this particular season of signups, for example, we've seen the benefits of being able to schedule a scale out at noon every day when these 900 people are coming in to handle that traffic. That's all because we got us onto a more robust platform, and we're not having to sort of suffer those consequences. So yeah, that Azure has been a key component. The portal connector, I'll just quickly say, was really kind of the driving factor, right? Because what we had in ADX was, you could say maybe in its pre-life, right? It was a competitive to this portal connector product. ADX was a way to, talk to a dynamic CRM system, and so we knew that was an important feature set that we needed, right? And so we learned of Portal Connector first. That's what led us to the Sitefinity platform, since it runs on that, and that became the journey. And I can say firsthand again, I have made good on more promises since we have launched this portal of saying, wait, if you wait, that's a great idea. Let me get to this new Sitefinity platform, and I'll be able to do that very easily. And I've been able to make good on that so many times because of this world that we're in now.
That's great. All right, Christina, enough tech talk. Let's talk some strategy.
Finally. So, one of the most fun parts about this project from a strategy perspective was really getting to dive deeper into this user base because this is not one that we frequently work with. There was a lot of really great information here to learn, and it really was so fun to get to know these folks deeper. And I wanted to show some examples here of personas and user journeys, which are really key. And sometimes, folks can kind of overlook the importance of it, but it really, if you don't take your time to understand your user base, how in the world can we effectively communicate with them or provide something for them that is going to delight them? And so doing this persona and user journey exercise after we had done our discovery session and our survey, we were able to use the data that we found from those focus groups and our survey group, and we were able to meld that with some data research that performed into different industry magazines, and really doing a lot of research to fully flesh out what these profiles look like. And here you'll see an example of our stage manager persona. It's very interesting, to look at what are the apps that they're using, how are they engaging online, because these are the types of things that we want to know. For instance, if we see that this user group is a high user of Instagram, maybe we want to talk about, do we want some sort of Instagram integration where they can easily share the project that they're working on to their personal Instagram, or if they're using it for their own sort of business presence, right? They have a public Instagram, here's my work as a portfolio in a way. Can we make it easier for them to share that? Because ultimately that will help promote them. They'll grow, and that's a real value add that we can give to our members. So that's the type of thing that we look for when we're looking at software and applications. And then we want to dive deeper into the problems and challenges, as well as their goals and needs. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to just fix problems. We want to fix problems because that's important, but we don't want to stop there. We want to make sure that we're adding value and we're really optimizing this experience and giving them an ideal experience beyond just, hey, this is, great, I can get in and pay my dues, that's awesome. But now I also want to be able to really get to meet people and get the value out of this membership. And I think that's what's going to separate, the sort of good portals from the awesome portals is, how can we drive home that value of membership and why you should be a member and what kind of benefits are you getting by being a member. From there, we went into our user journey step, which I know this is a lot of small text on a screen here, but I want you to see how we look at, what is happening every step of the way. So ultimately, this person has a goal for Sammy, for our stage manager persona. Their goal was really to, look at different packets for different shows that they're working on, projects they're working on. They need to get the latest packet for the project so they can understand, what they're working with and how they'll be able to perform their job effectively. So how is this person coming onto the portal going to be able to find that information? Now, what we know through all of our research and through our countless projects at SilverTech is that people engage in websites in different ways that align with their preferences. So some folks really will go to that navigation and they'll sort of follow the path and they'll click through until they find what they're looking for. Other folks will hit up that search bar because they're impatient and they just want to get where they're going, and that's the end of it. So it's really important when we're looking at how our users are engaging that we meet everyone where they're at. We can never expect them to come to us. We have to go to them. So the way that we can do that is through really effective navigation with clear labeling that is very logically laid out. So that allows our user base to follow very clear steps to get to their goal. And having a really effective search tool that, as we leaned on that content strategy piece, involves tagging effectively, and clear description of search results, and maybe even weighted search results depending on what we know that people are actually going to be accessing. And we use our data from analytics to help inform that, as well as the things that we learned in our discovery session. So see, here you can see we literally walk a mile in Sammy's shoes. This is what I'm trying to do. Here is where I'm engaging. What is the content I need to see at each step of the way? Do I need to see clear navigation? Do I want to maybe reach out to someone? Do I need a download here? We want to identify some of that, as well as filtering, sorting, those kinds of things. And then on our opportunity step, we really talk about, okay, now we've got our basics. So what are the opportunities here? What are those areas of delight? Things like being able to have, CTAs to learn more about agreements, or maybe CTAs to reporting forms, because hey, you're downloading this packet, but you're also going to need reporting forms at some point. So here's a CTA to that, so that you don't have to go back up to that navigation and figure out where those forms are. We're going to put them right in your journey, so you'll be able to say, oh yeah, I need those too, and grab them right when you're there. And really also, this was another one where we wanted to drive home business reps as well. If they want to reach out to their business rep because they have questions or concerns, putting that in their journey. So it's not just about navigating at that actual main menu level or even at the search level. It's also about, how do people navigate while they're on the page? How can we help push them to take the next step? Or how can we provide them information that we think is they're going to need based on our focus groups and our survey data, as well as our analytics data. So that way they're not having to seek this out. We're being more proactive in our approach versus them having to take that step.
Generally, how many personas and user journeys do you and your team typically start with, Christina?
So typically we'll do anywhere from 3 to 5. I think, we have to be very strategic in this, and we want to align it not just with the reality of who our users are, but also want to align it with what are our organizational goals. Something that we talked about when we talked about new members versus veteran members, that was really about from an organizational goal standpoint, right? Because we need to grow membership. We need to be able to appeal to the younger demographic and folks who are not members yet, and how can we do that, and how can we showcase all the benefits of membership so that the organization can continue to grow. So we look at organizational goals, and then we also look at the reality of, okay, who is actually engaging with us, and how can we make sure we meet those folks' needs as well.
Great. And then I think, the personas and user journeys really kind of inform a lot of the other work that we did, which we kind of just laid out here in this slide. But I guess what are those other deliverables that you really need to get done in that strategy, based on kind of that foundational work of personas and user journeys?
Yeah, I think, the reason we do all of that discovery work, the surveys, the focus groups, the personas, the user journeys, is ultimately we're using all of that to create this sort of juggernaut that's going to then explode into what is our site map and our content strategy. Because ultimately we have to be able to guide these folks through the site and help them find what it is that they're looking for. And unless we understand very clearly what they're looking for and what their ideal way to engage is, we won't be able to effectively do that. So the sort of fruit of all of this is that sitemap. It's the navigation. How are we going to organize things? What are we going to call things? That's a big piece of it too, because ultimately internally we may know something is called, you know, LORT, but if you're a brand new member, do you know what LORT stands for? Do you know what that means? So those are the types of things we have to think about. How do we make sure we're using the language that our users are using so that we can meet them where they're at? Additionally, we look at things like content strategy. How are we tagging things effectively so that when we talk about, as I just mentioned, putting things in their path, things like calls to action for next pieces of content that they would find useful, how can we tag that on the back end so that way we can make it easier for our internal web managers to be able to say, okay, I'm building out this page and I know that this user is going to need information on, on the LORT, for example. How can we put that? Can we tag that effectively so I can put the appropriate content right in their path so they're not having to go search it out and go back and kind of have that frustration. I mean, if we know anything about users, we know they're impatient. And so we want to make sure that everything we're providing is going to be really well aligned to make that as seamless and frictionless as possible.
Great. And that also helps you to work with our creative team as well, right? To
Yes,
then
absolutely.
start to
Because when we
make
get
that
to the
as
creative
well.
step, it becomes, how do we use our real estate most effectively, right? Where is it that people, we know that, like, a lot of folks don't want to scroll, or we know that we need to call out certain things a little bit more. Like in the second image here, you can clearly see, where does your eye go immediately? It goes to those notifications, right? And so we have to think about that. How can we make sure that is being prominently displayed, and we're getting the most urgent information to the user as possible, as well as how does it make sense for navigation, how do we lay things out in a way that's going to be very strategic, that we're getting the right content to them at the quickest time frame.
Perfect. And then part of this, through our design process, we create the homepage designs and multiple other high fidelity mocks. But in addition, something else that we do that's a little different is we create a widget guide, right? Can you speak a little bit about the widget guide, Christina? And then Doug and I can speak a little bit about kind of specifications and how the widget guide feeds into that.
Yeah. So the widget guide is actually one of my favorite things that we do here at SilverTech. And the reason for that is, it will break down each piece of functionality into its specific parts. So it will tell you, something that I am very passionate about is giving my clients and working through a strategic process that's going to give them a good suite of functionality with a lot of flexibility. Ultimately, I am not a fan of designing something that's going to be used on one page one time, because I'm all about efficiency and I'm all about flexibility. So the widget guide is going to walk through, here's all the pieces of functionality that we are saying we're going to build. Here's how you can use it. Here's where it will get used, and here are the requirements of it. So for instance, in your top image here, you can see we're looking at a standard hero banner. And this is going to show you, here's what this element is going to look like on the desktop. Here's what it's going to look like on mobile. And here's the type of content that you're going to need here. You're going to need an image that is, 1080 by 900. You're going to need a headline that can be a max of 50 characters. You're going to need a sub headline that's optional, but it's a max of 100 characters, whatever it might be. It's going to give you those really granular specifications, which can serve a couple purposes. One, you'll know before you even start writing what those requirements are. So if you have a large organization like Actors Equity, Doug is not sitting there writing content all day, every day, thankfully for him. He's got people that they have a communications team that does this. We have subject matter experts that do this type of work. And so what we can do is then come up with, I call them worksheets, where you're able to lay out, here's what the page looks like, here's all the elements, here's what you need to write for. Because one of the biggest pain points that I see with clients is the difference between writing and writing for the web. They are two very different things. And so what this can do is help you focus your efforts and allow you to be able to push some of that work to your subject matter experts and say, here, this is what I need. This is how you need to write it. Here's your kind of boundaries. So that way no one's going off the rails. And when they come to you with here, okay, here it is. I wrote my blog post or my page or whatever it is, you can be reasonably assured that it's going to lay out on that page very well. And you're not having to worry about going back or have things looking kind of wonky. Everything's going to look really good. Additionally, this is a great training tool. Let's say Doug hires a new, web admin who's going to be in charge of the website and really managing that back end. He's able to then turn this over and say, here you go. This is the functionality. Learn it, understand what these things are called. So that way, when you go to spin up a page, okay, I need a standard hero banner. I already know what I'm going to need. I know what image is going to fit. And that way it can be a really excellent training tool. And I think that's a big piece of where that value comes in.
I would just quickly echo that. I mean, you almost got it right. Our comms team has grown exponentially since we launched this site. So having that resource as new people come onto their team, and we hired a digital artist. So, saving that person time from not putting the wrong image in or not understanding that, by having that as a reference guide has been gold. So yes.
And it really shortens your time to live too. Like, how many times do we hear about people who are struggling through their current implementation, and it's a pain to build a page and everything is, it can be so frustrating. Removing that frustration and shortening that cycle time to live can be such a breath of fresh air for our internal teams.
I also think it keeps, the original design alive and consistent, right? Like, it's one thing, we're all in the moment of design and we're all eyes are upon it and tweaking it and fine tuning it, and then you launch it and then it becomes a thing that is just a living, moving thing. And this helps, have sort of a little bit of ballast and a checkpoint to say, are we still following this thing that we made an investment in time and energy and creativity to ensure that it's serving the purpose it was intended.
Yeah.
Perfect. And as part of that, I don't know, Doug, if you want to talk a little bit about code development and kind of using DevOps. But basically what we did was we built out our user stories and different things like that. I'm not a developer. I don't go into DevOps ever. But it's a big piece of what we do before fingers get to keys and we actually start developing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, again, speaking to this, the journey on the actors equity side, which was, kind of a two-man show between myself and my longtime colleague, Kurt. And so for us, it was a little bit like Christmas because all of a sudden we had, additional resources and talented engineers and developers that we were able to work with to actually make things happen and bring different ideas and different approaches. And that DevOps approach, which we were using sort of our own loose version of Agile, not too heavy-handed, but we did want to track specific user stories and tasks, and having that collaboration and that space to be able to assign a task or report a bug and assign that up to Ian so he could, take care of it or pass it on to Julian or one of the other developers, again, really made the process, efficient. It gave us, a history to be able to look back at, how we resolved an issue because it could always come back again, right? So that was key. We were already using that, that DevOps space ourselves. So it was an easy thing to adopt. I just created some new tasks for Ian on the public site yesterday. So it proved to be a great resource and tool for us.
That's great. All right, I hit the wrong button. There we go. All right, so some feedback and lessons as we wrap this up, and we'll open it up to some questions. We should have time for a few anyways, but I guess some of the feedback and lessons, I think, when I think about this, Azure was definitely a big piece of some of the lessons learned of how we could collaborate more together. We brought in our IT team that was really the experts in Azure to kind of help you all configure some things. Obviously, the portal connector and authentication was a big piece, and I think, Doug, you were probably more integral into the work that was done with the portal connector than we were. You were probably the expert as far as the team went, and I think that showed that we got a lot of learning from you on that. More, and we did not think that was going to be the way going in, but I think those are all positives. I know when we started the project, it took us a little while to get kind of familiar and organized and really working in the way that I think you and Kurt wanted to work and whatnot. And I think, that happens sometimes as you start projects. And I think what you did was you came to me and said, hey, I'm feeling like we need to change things up a little bit. And I feel like, these are some of the things I'm seeing, and these are some of the things that I'd like to see changed. And I think we were able to take that feedback back early as a team, adjust, realize, hey, maybe we do need to work in a little bit more of an agile fashion, and things like that. So, there was, and there always is in every project, some amount of, this could be better. But I think as a team and as a partnership, we were pretty good at overcoming those issues quickly and early on. Besides that, feedback from the membership, feedback from your leadership. I know Christina and I, about halfway through this project, presented to your board, which we didn't realize was like 88 people or something at the time and then we got on and it was just this.
I think we had like 5 whole minutes, which was really great.
Yeah, that's very equity, right? And go. Yeah, it's like an audition, right? Here's your
Right.
cards. Thank you. We'll call you.
Doug. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, you did. You got the public site, so
That's true.
Yeah.
We got the best kind of callback.
But how, membership there have been positive impact? In fact, yeah.
I think so in general. It's when you're a service organization, there's always I think a tendency to hear more from the disgruntled and the squeaky wheels than there are the "this is amazing, you're all so wonderful." um, just kind of in my 26 years, you sort of learn to accept that. But I certainly have come across, many members in different, sort of forums and fashions that have responded. I certainly can say that there was one member in particular, I will not go into names, who, on the previous site was a pretty vocal, critic of, of many of the pain points that we were all talking about. And he actually wrote to me within a few weeks of the launch. And we didn't have an adversarial relationship, but I a lot of times was sort of the brunt of the criticism. That's the way it goes. And he wrote to me personally to say what a terrific job we had done and how amazing the site was. And that meant a lot to me because that's not typically how it works. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to accept that this world that you've immersed yourself in and that you've spent, all this time focusing on, to our members is only, a fraction of their day and what they do. And so it's important to them, but it's not always as important to them as it is to us because their real job and goal is to be working in the theater, right? And so it becomes sort of a functional part of what they do and how they interact with the union. But I think it's a testament that when you get it right, the grumblings go down because they're actually using the site and they're actually getting what they wanted out of it. And are they always satisfied? Of course not. That's why we continue to listen, continue to make modifications. We're in our election cycle right now where we have our leadership elections, and we built out an entire module on the portal that allow our candidates to submit all of their application to be a candidate online. They can upload their profile, their candidate statements, and now we built those pages so that members could come and view the candidates before voting to look at the different options, filtering them by the different positions. And that's an example of one of those, oh, I can do that now. I have this great platform and this great possibility. And it not only did it make I think for the members at large, the ability to sort of process and get all that election information easier, but it made it easier for our staff, who used to spend hours kind of collecting applications in PDF form and editing statements, more efficient. So it's been a real win. That's a great example of, the ongoing work and feedback, as a result of that. So.
Great. I like that you're not naming any names of who that person is, but you know who they are. You know that. All right, Christina, anything, or Doug, anything you all want to add that you feel like we might have missed before we open up for a couple questions?
I mean, look, I'll just shamelessly say that it's building this partnership with SilverTech has been just a great part of my 26 years, and something that I really look forward to for a long time. It's great to sort of feel like you're the the lone cowboy out there making it happen, but to find a partner like SilverTech to be able to do this work and to continue to do this work has really been a game changer. So thank you for all that you've done and continue to do. So.
Thanks, Doug. I mean, we appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership as well. We love working with you guys. It's a great organization from communications all the way, with everybody we've engaged with there. It's a great organization. And I think, when I look, we build dozens of websites every year. We've been in business for 28 years. The people that are most successful are these mutually beneficial partnerships where there is a mutual respect and we are not a vendor. And I think that's a testament to you all and your organization and your professionalism. But I think that's, those are the keys to being set up for success in a project like this or a regular website or any kind of technology project. Because it takes time, it's complex, it's a lot of money generally, big investment. So that collaboration is key. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I have one, Doug, for you. getting leadership buy-in and keeping leadership involved. Uh, how did you go about doing that internally um, to get investment for the project, but then to keep people apprised of what's going on, so you're not just in a bubble?
Sure. I mean, as I kind of made a joke about earlier, like we are, we've been around a long time. We're kind of a big bureaucratic organization, so there are many challenges to kind of get everyone's attention, keep everyone's attention. In this case, I think there was I think institutionally there was a knowledge that, this was something that, wasn't broken, but it was something that we needed to look at and needed to make an investment in. There was also, I think, I kind of took advantage of a certain sort of convergence of events, right? We had a convention of delegates, right? Like our governing body that you mentioned a few minutes ago is kind of like a House of Representatives. Like these, we have elected members from all over the country who are a part of this national council, and they determine policy and approve funding. Um, they're volunteers. But they organized to have a convention to come together with different resolutions for the direction of the union that were wide ranging. And there were a couple of resolutions that came out of that convention that were, touching on these digital areas. And so it gave me an opportunity to step forward and go, yes, that's a great resolution. Let's do that. And I think that sort of opportunity that came along, again, kind of by coincidence, really helped me be able to move this forward. Um, because the back end technical things that we talked about today are the hardest things to sort of move forward. Getting in front of that body of actors and stage managers and trying to talk about our outdated web platform, is, talk about 5 minutes. I only got two, and so um, this really gave an opportunity to do that, and, I think that process, going through an RFP process, again, despite the fact that it's a tedious task, you know, it helped give legitimacy. We weren't rushing through this process. We really, took the time to make sure we knew what we were looking for, that we're going to find the right partner, because as you said, it's a big investment. Um, and you kind of, work the crowds, right? It's everything from that elected body, which is critical because they are ultimately the ones that approve the money, to to the top leadership that is going to have to sort of sell it. So, just kind of play the politics a little bit. I guess it works to my advantage that I've been around here 26 years. So I, have some skills beyond the technical. Uh,
Yeah, 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 for sure.
but I think at the end of the day, it was about, I think the union was smart enough to recognize that this is a major investment, and this is now, 2024, and this was a year ago, right? That this, is an important piece of what we do, and it's not going away. It'll change shapes and sizes, and in a couple of years, the site maybe will be all AI driven. I don't know, but but it's important. This is not, hey, can we, do something frivolous. It's an important investment in our members and their ability to interact with the union, in a way that's critical.
And I think what you all also did really well is be really future thinking with it. It was not built with what do we need today and today only. It really was built with growth in mind. Even the design piece of it was looked at through a lens of, okay, this is great for the portal, but you have such a great understanding of Sitefinity and all the benefits that come with using a platform like Sitefinity, that now when we're at the public site, we're able to say, hey, are there elements we can use from the portal on the public site that's going to make sense and keep that really, even though we weren't talking about the public site back then, we knew this is kind of on the horizon. So let's keep in mind, how can we use the platform, sort of get the most out of our dollar with this platform and be able to use it in a way for our future projects and where we're going. And I think that makes a really big difference too when you're talking to leadership, to be able to say, it's not, yes, we're asking for this, but here's how we're going to also use it long term and how it's going to inform other projects as well. I think that can get a lot of buy-in.
Absolutely. And I would just, one thing I forgot to mention too is that it's worth noting is, we're a not-for-profit labor union. Our money comes from our members. They pay dues. And so, how we use our money is important. And this to me was a clear case of that putting their money back into them, right, directly back to them.
Mhm.
Well, with that said, we are at time. I appreciate you guys joining. Appreciate everybody who joined online to listen to this webinar. We didn't get to all your questions, but we will offline get to you. And if you want to speak with myself or Christina, feel free to shoot us an email or you can scan the QR code. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate it, Doug. Thank you,
My pleasure.
Christina.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And that's it.